Production underwriting for Ruckus has been made possible in part by the generous contributions from Fred and Lou Hartwig and from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. Ruckus, where left and right fight about right and wrong. So let's welcome the Ruckettes. Lawyer and lobbyist Woody Cozad, media consultant Mary O'Halloran, Kansas City Star editorial writer and columnist Yael Abouhaka, and Gwen Grant, president and CEO of the Urban League of Kansas City. I'm Mike Shannon. It's not as if we've ever ignored Sam Brownback and the state he governs, but the governor and Kansas deserve a lot of coverage this week because of all that's been going on. First, to make the state's financial woes even more critical, a 3-judge panel ruled that Kansas school funding was not meeting the constitutional standard and that school aid must be hiked by as much as $500 million. The state says it will appeal. The court ruling left the plaintiffs in the case, including the Kansas City, Kansas School District, happy. But the decision caused others to argue that decisions about dollars and cents should be left to elected legislators, not appointed judges. So what about that, Gwen? Is the Kansas court overstepping its bounds?
Absolutely not. I mean, that's the process in this country. It's a process of checks and balances. It's a process of having an opportunity for legal redress. That's what the court system is set up to do. So because the governor does not like the decision, then there's a process for that. You appeal the decision, you go through the process to the Supreme Court, take it as far as you can. The Constitution says that education is a right that is granted to everyone as a part of the Constitution. The court is set up to protect the constitutional rights. So therefore, they issued a ruling, and the state can
I've got news for you. Governor Brownback does not agree with what you just said, and let's take a look at what he said about it in Tuesday night's State of the State.
For the last 2 years, you, the legislature, have proven that you can increase state support for education while pursuing pro-growth economic policies at the same time. And so I ask you to make it clear in law that defining what is a suitable provision for public funding of education is a job for the people's elected representatives and no one else.
So, does this change your mind?
No, absolutely not. And thank God we have a system that would hopefully cause such a measure would call for a constitutional amendment, and therefore would have to go through a process before you can just change. You want to change the law now because you didn't get the judgment that you wanted.
Woody, is this unheard of, this idea that decisions about dollars and cents be left alone to legislators and not adjudicated by the judiciary?
It is the basis for Anglo-American liberties. All the other countries of Europe sank into tyrannies under kings who had absolute power, except England, because the English established as early as Magna Carta that the king, somebody unelected, somebody who didn't represent a body of people, could not just impose taxes. And that grew and grew. And kings were beheaded over this. Charles I, James II was run out over issues like this. The appropriations power rests with the elected representatives of the people. All legislative power under the Constitution of the United States is in the House of Representatives and Senate. And then it says what? Every appropriations tax bill has to come out of the House of Representatives.
But over time, we've seen in this country that the courts
we have not seen much of this at all.
Well, we have seen the courts have the final decision in a lot of matters.
Not in appropriations matters. This is truly extraordinary. And they went into Missouri and tried to get this done. And what did the Missouri Supreme Court do? It said, get out of here and go over to the legislature. They appropriate the money.
The federal court came in and ordered Kansas City patrons to pay more taxes.
They were squeamish enough about that to engage in the fig leaf of saying, no, you cannot order the taxpayers to pay the tax. You can order the school board, which engaged in segregation.
The point is the federal court was responsible for a tax increase.
That's right, and it has never happened since.
The remedy when the constitutional rights have been violated.
Gwen, let Mary in here.
The courts have the right to seek a remedy for an unconstitutional behavior of the other two branches. The Constitution of the state of Kansas is really very clear. It's one of the best. Article
vague.
6. Article 6 is one of the best statements on education in any state I know of.
Let
And
me,
it just
let me
says,
read just a portion of it, and then we'll get back to you.
All right.
This doesn't sound very concrete to me. The legislature shall make suitable provision to pay for public education. What,
Yes.
Suitable provision?
Suitable provision means that they must finance state schools, and they must do it in such a way that the cost, that we know what it costs to educate a child. And by the way, the beginning of Chapter 6 says, Article 6 says that they must provide for the intellectual, educational, vocational, and scientific improvement of the people of the state. So what they've said is, we ruled once. You didn't do. You did.
This is a rerun. This has already happened several years ago.
It has.
Where the
It has.
court said that the money being appropriated for schools
Courts
in
seek
Kansas was
remedies
insufficient.
to enforce what they rule, Mike, all the time. Legislatures are not kings in this. They have every right to appropriate, but they don't have the right to violate the Constitution of the state. That's right.
Gail.
Well, I do think I see Woody's point. I mean, I really do. I think that's an excellent point, that it is not widespread. Now, part of the problem in Kansas is that the legislature for several years kind of did follow what the Supreme Court had said before. In other words, they said, oh, okay, we'll try to do it, and then it fell back. It has fallen back since then. And so now Brownback is toying with this plan, and the state legislature is toying with the plan of basically trying to, appoint their own judges, essentially, appoint a conservative Supreme Court eventually that will, let them off the hook. That's a long-term plan. But I do think that I'm troubled by a court appropriating the money very specifically. I'm troubled by that as somebody who does think there should be a counter on the elected representatives. I mean, especially when they're such wazoos that Kansas, Missouri have now. I mean, you really have to watch it. But I'm troubled by the
And you wonder how they reached a judgment that
Absolutely.
$3,838 is not enough, but $4,492 would be the right amount.
Mike, the legislature set up the means by which that number was arrived at.
Now, that is true.
That's true.
And what if the state doesn't have the
that's not
resources to fund
Right.
the schools to the
Mike,
level that the
the
court
legislature.
So does the legislature get to go back,
Yeah.
alter the process, and therefore undercut the
The courts have been
constitutional
very
decision?
lenient about this.
According to Mary, they do.
They have the right to enforce the Constitution and the way that the legislature set up to finance schools.
So the
and that's what
legislature
they're
can
doing.
change
They
Let's
could. They
Let's
could.
continue with more of this. In Topeka, Governor Brownback gave his State of the State address Tuesday night. It was brutal to watch. You'll recall that the governor pushed tax cuts beginning this year as a path to improving the state's business climate and fostering economic growth. Speaking to state lawmakers, the governor sounded the call for even deeper cuts.
By making government more efficient and growing our economy, we can keep the sales tax flat at its current level and cut income taxes on our lower income working families to 1.9% and drop the top rate to 3.5%. This glide path to zero will not cut funding to schools, higher education, or essential safety net programs.
All right, Yale, you and the Star on board with the Brownback tax plan.
No. Okay. But let me say something positive about good old Sammy at the beginning here. I mean this. He has gone all out, as Woody has pointed out before. Kansas is now an experiment. They're an experiment the rest of the nation can watch. I mean, how fast can you cut income taxes without really having an assured source of new revenue? The governor says that we will have new companies coming here. They will pay more in taxes, and long-term revenues will go up. That is a possibility. The other possibility is that doesn't happen. They cut taxes and they have to cut a lot of things, and 3 years from now or 4 years from now, the experiment's gone bad. I mean, we've even had some Republican state representatives say, well, if it doesn't work out, we'll make some changes. So very specifically, no, we do not think, the Star editorial page you asked, no, we do not think they should be having more cuts until some of this works out.
Is there a policy to have a daily editorial criticizing Brownback?
No, but let's see here. We could probably make that happen.
Every Sunday.
But you don't want that.
Every weekday.
But the other thing is, remember, this is an experiment with real people. I mean, we're already having the CanCare
I wish
experiment where you're having people that were taken care of under an old system, And now there are problems cropping up, which I think is very possible with a big system like that. Experiments have consequences, is what I want people to realize here.
Well, Yale, the thing I really would take issue with you is that experiments should be pilot projects. You want to you want to see whether people can get along with less money. You want to take away the food sales tax rebate that people got, ordinary working people who have jobs, and all manner of other cuts. The tragedy of this speech, Mike, is that it shifts the burden of responsibility for governing the state and for paying for its public services onto the shoulders of those least able to pay in order to take the Treasury money, the money that he gets from the people of the state, and the extension of a sales tax, and give it to the people at the top. And the people at the top are the ones that are paying for his campaign
It
to
is
do
a
this.
bit of a change, although he never said during the campaign this idea of
radical.
keeping the 1 cent
Yeah.
sales tax intact, which was just supposed to be,
The
and this was
temporary.
done by the previous administration just for
It
a set
was.
period of time.
And you know, Mary's right. I mean, essentially, with sales tax being regressive, I mean, one of the concerns might be that people who are lower income be paying higher sales taxes than they would have normally, with that 6/10 dropping off. But that's where I wish a lot of the state reps and state senators will speak up. Do they really want to continue this tax, this burden? Because some of them have said no. Well, if they don't, experiment number 13 will be, well, now we're going to lose $200 and some odd million, I recall. I mean, just hundreds of millions of dollars will go away if they don't want to keep it.
Right.
Because it's not really a tax. He said, we'll keep it flat. Well, no, it's supposed to go down 6/10 by July 1. So it's really going to be a tax increase, according to some of
When
these
Obama
Republicans.
does the same thing, these folks don't complain about it. You notice that? The tax is supposed to go down. That's not a tax increase.
We got sales
Let me
tax.
do this in Kansas City all the time. We pass a tax for 5 years. When
Right,
5
renew
years
it.
up,
Yes.
we say, hey, that was a
And I
temporary tax,
object.
but we'd like to alter some of what we spend it on and extend it for another 5 years.
Well, one other thing that he
Big
brought
woo.
up that
I
I'd
mean,
like to touch
goes on all
on
the
briefly
time.
and direct to you. Brownback says he'd like to change the way appellate judges are selected in Kansas. He would like to see a system where either A, the Supreme Court is elected, or B, the governor appoints and the state Senate would confirm or deny, just as is the case in the federal system.
Yeah. Well, I haven't been happy with the results of the federal system a lot of the time, so.
You're
I'm
not a happy man
I'm not.
about anything.
But I defend a very similar court plan in Missouri, and I'm paid to do so by the Mo Bar and Missouri Republican Attorneys for Civil Justice. So I'm biased on this. I like the plan they have in Kansas. However, its worst enemies apparently sit on the Supreme Court. If you want that plan to go away, you just go on telling the legislature how much money they got to spend in making our first line of defense. Our first line of defense in Missouri is to go to the legislature and say, what has the Supreme Court done that's so awful in Missouri? And they don't have an answer. In Kansas, they got an answer.
All right. There is something reassuring about living in Kansas City, Missouri. You know you're never far away from the next election. And coming in April to a polling place near you, a vote on what is termed a temporary renewal of a tax that provides health care for the poor. The temporary extension would last until 2023. Questions arise. Is a 9-year extension temporary? Is an Obamacare supposed to take care of this problem? Let's check with Mary. Mary, 9 years too long?
Yes, it is. When taxes are levied and it's labeled temporary, then it ought to be temporary. One of the things that Cy James did when he came in as mayor, and I'm so happy about this, was put together his municipal tax commission to look at the way taxes are levied in the city and for what. And one of the hopeful outcomes of that was going to be that all these taxes for all manner of little things that come at all different times, some are temporary, nobody understands the taxes.
The commission said 4 years on the
It said,
health levy.
and it understood that here comes Obamacare, and it may or may not be allowed to take effect for people on Medicaid in the Kansas City area. So let's just do it for 4 years as a temporary thing so that Truman Medical Center and other providers can get over the transition from the present to Obamacare.
What do we know in 2 years?
A big problem.
Well,
Do we
don't
know
they
in 2
also
years?
have-
We'll know in 2 years. The questions are, will
Yeah.
Missouri agree
here's-
to the expansion of Medicaid?
Not
and
likely.
how will Obamacare affect
But
this
here's
kind
the
of an
problem
issue?
that
Will we
Dave-
know that in 2 years?
that Dave Helling points out in his article where he says, look, the odd thing about that is that this current tax doesn't end until 2014.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they're saying, oh, but we'll have now 4 different times. If it loses, we'll be able to go
Well,
back to the
but in
people
all
4
fair-
different times.
Yeah, and I agree.
So-
I agree that a temporary tax should be temporary, but I still support the levy because the health care needs are permanent.
They are.
The needs
That's
for
true.
indigent people to have health care, that's a permanent need, and maybe they need to address the long-term impact. We don't know what's going to happen with Obamacare until we know the decision on Medicaid in the state. And in the meantime, I'm not upset that they are trying to address this situation because of the impact that it's going to have on people who don't have medical insurance.
Gwen,
That's
I
why
really-
Obamacare went into
So,
effect.
from that
All right,
perspective,
Gail.
but Obamacare, there are a lot of intricacies in this
There
thing
are.
that have to be
And
worked
Gwen,
out.
I would really
They can be
agree with
they
you.
can be worked
Let's
out.
let
I mean,
Gail
I've
speak.
covered this for years,
Yeah.
and let's be very clear. Truman Medical Centers and the free health clinics and the Kansas City Health Department will never say no to the money. Okay, they will always want more money. They will always make the argument that Gwen just made: is we have indigent people to care for here. It's a permanent need. I absolutely agree. But the question is, how much money do Kansas City local taxpayers have to put forward? Right now, it's $50 million from the 2 health levies. That's all, not all going to indigent care, but it's $50 million. If you remove this, it would go down about $15 million. So Kansas City taxpayers, by voting no in April, would save about $15 million. The question always is, and it's still unclear in my mind, I'm still working through it, is it worth $15 million to continue this tax for 9 years? Now, I think I agree totally with you, Mary. 9 years is too long. Do it for 4 years. Find out what happens with Medicaid, and let's move on.
Now, Kansas City, Missouri has a new fire chief. 26-year veteran Paul Berardi takes over from Smokey Dyer. What is his biggest challenge other than he doesn't have a cute last name like his predecessor?
Getting along with
Or first
Yale.
name, Smokey.
Getting along with Yale.
That his biggest problem?
Absolutely. No. Well, of course.
Well, then he's in
it's a little-
trouble.
Yeah, then
No,
in
he's a
real
good
trouble.
guy.
No,
So far.
I am. He really comes so highly recommended. I talked to Lynn Horsley, who also covers the fire department, about this issue, and she said, he has a really. She suggested that his personality is going to be one of his best deals going forward because he's sort of laid back, he's easy to get along with,
Yeah.
and he comes out of, his biggest challenge is going to be to blend the emergency services with the fire services because we're having fewer fires, and that's for sure, many fewer. But there are many more medical emergencies. And so how to blend and continue to blend the old mass services in with the fire department.
How long ago did that happen, Yale? 2 years ago?
Yes,
And
2010,
so the
actually,
process of
Yeah.
molding these two cultures together continues.
That is very important. That's the most important priority for him, and he realizes that.
Former Senator Chuck Hagel's nomination to be Secretary of Defense has now been endorsed by a retired 4-star general, former National Security Advisor, one-time chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and a former Secretary of State. And they're all the same guy, Colin Powell. Powell framed his support of the controversial Nebraskan this way.
So this is a guy who knows veterans, knows the troops, knows the USO. And when people say, well, that doesn't necessarily make him a good candidate for Secretary of Defense, I'll tell you who thinks that makes him a good candidate for Secretary of Defense: the men and women in the armed forces of the United States and their parents who know that this is a guy who will be very careful about putting their lives at risk because he put his life at risk.
Well, that's the positive side. What are some of the negatives that critics are seeing in Chuck Hagel, Woody?
Well, when you pick somebody nominally of the opposite party, it's generally to move to the center on whatever position or issue you've picked him on. This is the opposite. He has picked the president has picked a Republican and by doing so, knowing he was sticking a sharp stick in the eye of people who are strong on national defense, or however you want to phrase it, including Republicans in general. Hagel is to the left of the president on at least one major issue, which is how to handle Iran. So it's no comfort to Republicans, no comfort to Israel, our Middle East policy. This is a man who thinks the Defense Department is bloated and that it's got to, so he's willing to make apparently very deep cuts to it. And in a point of fact, what we're at is a place in our history where we've got to assess what our threats are, what the strategy is going to be facing them, and how to deal with them. And you don't know in those circumstances, are we spending too much right now? Or are we not? If you know the answer to that already, then you're not paying attention to the problem.
One of the people who had been watched by all of the analysts and pundits was Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, a leading Democrat, Jewish man who's very concerned about the state of Israel. He has now said he will support Hagel. So is that dispositive, Mary? Is that the end of it?
Very much so, because he not only got Chuck Schumer had a press conference and says, Senator Hagel's fine with me. And the reason is that he said out loud, and to Senator Schumer and others apparently, that he will insist that any kinds of negotiations with Hamas or Hezbollah or anybody else, any other group in the Middle East, will not take place until they acknowledge the right of the state of Israel to exist. And that's always the central question in our foreign policy with regard to Israel. One of the problems with Chuck Hagel is he wasn't all that distinguished as a U.S. Senator. I'm a native Nebraskan, and I know about it. I talked with him a couple years ago when he was here giving a speech, and he is just such a free thinker. But this is a man who fought in the war. This is a man who carries shrapnel around in his body, and he will be the first infantryman to hold this position. I think the president picked a friend and somebody that he can trust, and he'll do what the president tells him to do.
I think it was George Will pointing out in today's column that in the final analysis, it's the president's decision what happens with regard to defense in the United States. Now, President Obama has a plan to deal with gun violence issues. It includes, but is not limited to, universal background checks, a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, and he's issued 23 executive orders that deal with bureaucratic matters within the purview of a president. What now?
Well, battles start, of course, but I think the background check is the one that a lot of Americans agree with. I think the NRA has had some. So, the proof will be: can you make it very universal? Can you uncover gun shows and all that kind of stuff? The assault weapons ban, I'd be in favor of banning all guns in America. So I guess I'm over here and killing the Second Amendment. However, but since it's going to stay there, you obviously want to have some kind of ban on assault weapons, which will be very controversial. But I think getting the background check will be good.
There's criticism of the president, Gwen, for holding this event where he announced his plan with a group of children sitting nearby, children who had written him letters. What do you think?
I think the criticism is ridiculous. I think his job is to do what he did, take that bold leadership step. He didn't take long getting there. He said he was going to take action. He took it. The children were slaughtered as a result of the killing, and then to have some of these children who wrote the letters there, I think that makes a strong statement for the country. And this is a process of him exercising his executive authority. It's going to be challenged. It's also political. He's got to tell a story.
Do you agree with the NRA ad that says Obama's just another hypocritical elitist?
Don't even get me started on that ad.
But what about it? We don't. No.
Like she said,
It is time now for Roast and Toast, where each Ruckette speaks the truth, or at least his or her version of it. And we begin tonight with Yale.
Well, this is a toast to Raytown Superintendent Alan Markley, a toast to, in the end, Mayor Sly James and all the people who worked out this agreement to end a TIF that actually is in Kansas City but affected the Raytown School District. TIFs don't end in Kansas City because they just keep going and going and going so they can, keep public subsidies for economic developments. When and if this one ends, this will be a good news Kansas City, and it's a template for how it can be done in the future as more of these publicly subsidized districts are ended, and that's good for Kansas City taxpayers.
A roast and a toast to Senator Tom Dempsey of St. Charles, the President Pro Tem of the Missouri Senate. Senator Dempsey wants to do something about transportation in the state of Missouri, and that's good, and that is a discussion we need to have. And he wants to do a bond issue for buildings at the universities. The universities of the state of Missouri are appallingly irresponsible in the way they defer maintenance in their buildings. When George Russell was president of this university system, he left with no deferred maintenance in the four-campus system. Today, they have way over $100 million worth. They just let the buildings go to hell, and then they show up every decade or so at the state legislature saying, well, since we've been irresponsible, let's do a bond issue and fix all the buildings we let go downhill. They've got to be told to take a responsible stand for the long term, or no more money.
This is a toast to President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden for acting swiftly to bring forward measures to address gun control in America. It was a bold move, and it's what's important to get the dialogue going so that we can eventually address a long-standing problem for this country.
This is a toast to the legacy and memory of Dr. Martin Luther King. This is his week here in Kansas City, and certainly everybody who worked so hard to make Kansas City's celebration of his birthday a good one. And Gwen, your article in the paper was really wonderful. And I am just celebrating personally the fact that on Monday, before we all get together again next Thursday, Martin Luther King, his official birthday celebration, and the inauguration of the next president will be on the same day, on Monday. And just a matter of great pride for the American people. The Constitution in full, that's what we're celebrating on Monday, a great American day.
And finally, a quick toast and thanks to Tony Botello of Tony's Kansas City for his reference to Ruckus last week. He mentioned this program's lengthy tenure, now starting its 9th year with the current panel, 7.5 years more with previous panels. Tony's Kansas City called Ruckus a Kansas City institution of local opinion. And that's Ruckus for this week. More local public affairs discussions coming up Friday at 7:30 with Nick Haynes in Kansas City Week in Review. Now, on behalf of the Ruckettes and the Ruckus crew, Mike Shannon saying thanks for watching and good night.